Hello, guys. Today we're going to dive into a topic that can be considered kind of controversial. There's been many conversations all over social media and other platforms about this so-called magic pill. What I'm talking about is the new generation of weight loss drugs, such as Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. These are all medications that mimic a natural hormone in your body called a GLP-1. Now, people that choose to take these drugs are losing quite a bit of weight. They're even reversing their diabetes, and in some cases, they're changing their lives completely. But as Johann Hari explores in his book, The Magic Pill, The Extraordinary Benefits and Disturbing Risks of the New Weight Loss Drug, the story isn't simple. Now, this isn't just about a miracle drug, but rather, what happens exactly when a culture and, a society that's obsessed with food, shame, and body image finally finds a chemical way to control hunger. So, for today, I wanted to unpack two major ideas from Hari's book. First is the extraordinary benefits of these drugs. How on earth these drugs seem to be changing lives, and why they might represent one of the biggest breakthroughs in modern medicine. And second, the disturbing risks. Not just the physical side effects, but the deeper psychological and social shifts that might follow if we hand control of our appetite over to a needle. Now, let's start with the part that's getting all the hype. The drugs actually work. And they work in a way that almost no previous weight loss intervention ever has. Hari begins the book by describing his own journey. He was overweight. He was constantly battling cravings, trying diet after diet, and unfortunately failing every time. Now, I know this might sound familiar because I think a lot of us have struggled in the same ways. Probably millions of people. And it ends up being a lifelong cycle of guilt, restriction, relapse, and then repeat. But when he took his first injection of Ozempic, something kind of crazy happened. The constant voice in his head telling him to eat, that endless noise, it just quieted down. He didn't have to white knuckle his way through every craving anymore. Food didn't dominate his thoughts. And for the first time, he felt free from what he called the tyranny of appetite. Now, I think that's the real magic here. These drugs that mimic GLP-1, it basically signals your brain that you're full and slows your digestion. And I know it kind of sounds crazy. It sends a signal to your brain, and then now you feel like you're full? Yeah, pretty much. And people taking the drug, it supercharges that signal. Can you believe that? What's the result of that? People eating smaller portions, and those smaller portions are actually making you feel satisfied. The cravings fade away. And for many people, their blood sugar stabilizes, blood pressure is able to improve, and slowly but surely, the weight comes off. Not for a few months, but it can be for good. Now, Hari talks to patients who lost 60, 70, even 100 pounds after years of going through the same cycle that he had went through. He interviewed doctors, those that, believe that medications might cut obesity rates in half over the next few decades. And for those with diabetes or heart disease, that could really be life-saving. Now, what's most powerful about this section of the book isn't just the numbers. It's the emotion and how people felt. Hari talks about how for the first time he felt what it was like to live without being at war with his own body. Now, can you imagine that? Just feeling like you're at war with your own body? I can relate to that. Imagine spending years thinking you're lazy or weak only to discover that your hunger wasn't a moral failure. It could be looked at as biology. Basically, a misfiring hormone. That's the beauty of this new science. It basically reframes obesity not as a lack of discipline, but as a treatable medical condition. And if that's true, then that means millions of people who've been judged or dismissed might finally find relief from it. Now, we do have to discuss the risks, but this is kind of where the book also takes a sharp turn, because at the end of the day, miracles do have shadows, and Hari doesn't just celebrate the results. He asks hard questions, like, what happens when we start chemically controlling something as primal as hunger? What does it mean for how we connect to food, pleasure, even our emotions? He describes moments when the drug worked too well. Food stopped being interesting. He actually says that he didn't crave it because he just didn't care. You know that feeling of just pure joy when you're cooking and when you're tasting foods and you might be sharing a meal? Basically, all of that kind of dulled down. Some people even described it like living in a grayscale. They stop drinking, stop smoking, even lose interest in sexual activities, all because those same reward pathways in the brain are turned down. See, that's what Hari calls the narrowing of desire. It basically raises a very scary question, which is, if we eliminate our cravings, do we also lose a part of what makes us human? Now, there are also, medical and social risks to think about. When you think about the long-term safety, and it's still being researched upon, we don't really know how lifelong GLP-1 might affect the pancreas, digestion, or mental health, Some people have reported of muscle loss, of feeling more tired, or even experiencing digestive issues. And once you stop taking it, most people gain the weight back, often quickly. Then there's an even deeper issue, which is what happens to society when a needle becomes the answer to a problem that's largely caused by our food environment. We live in a world engineered to make us overeat, unfortunately. Things like processed foods, sugar and everything, stress, marketing. Hari argues that these drugs treat the symptom, not the actual problem. And if we medicate away hunger, we might feel better in the moment, but we still haven't really changed the toxic food culture that created this epidemic in the first place. Now, some things to consider. These drugs are very expensive, often over $1,000 a month without insurance. So, if only the wealthy can afford to be thin, then what happens to everyone else? Does that mean we've created a new kind of inequality? These are the types of questions we gotta ask. Now, by the end of the magic pill, Johann Hari doesn't give us easy answers. He admits the drugs did change his life, but also it changed how he felt about life. He's grateful, but uneasy. And maybe that's where we all are right now, standing at the edge of a revolution we don't fully understand. That's why I'm speaking to those who have had this same issue in the past, like myself. Not even in the past, but in the present as well, right? Struggled with food eating habits, struggled with cravings, struggled with weight loss, constantly telling yourself, oh, this is, my new weight loss journey. I'm gonna get it right this time, and seeming like it fails every time. It seems like with the GLP-1 synthetic hormones, such as Ozempic, Mounjaro, that we could easily but expensively take another route. We can bypass all of the struggles and just get to the point where we start feeling better about ourselves. But at the same time, will we feel completely better about ourselves? Or is it just like Hari says, dulling down life and kind of putting a band-aid on the actual issue. So, to those of you who might be struggling in the same ways, you got to ask yourself these questions. And for everyone else, it's still important to think about, because this is going to shape our future society. Thank you for listening.